Good morning, students. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Heartron Skill Center near Fountain Chowk, Nagar. Our center code is 034. I am Ankit Sharma. Students, as we have discussed yesterday, that what is the history of hacking and what are the securities, issues, and need of cyber securities, we have been done types of cyber securities, these things. Today, we will be discussing the elements of security. What are the elements of security? So, elements of security. So what are the elements of security and what is elements and what is security in general? In general, in the form of computer security, that is in computer security, what we can understand that it is all about detecting and preventing the system. We are preventing our systems and we are detecting that viruses only from external agents. External agents are known as like threateners or cyber criminals. Okay, so these are external agents who somehow wants to harm our system or information. The person or the agent, external agents who wants to harm our systems or wants to harm our data or information, we just have to protect or detect that viruses and prevent the system from these external agents. So there is a specific elements that are kept in mind. The elements, we have 6 elements which we will be discussing now. So for cyber attacks, illegal cyber attacks, execution of these cyber attacks, we have to keep in mind some of the elements of security. There are total 6 elements of security which we will be discussing today. So let's start with the first one. What are the various elements of security and why elements are being used for fulfilling all the security related constraints and requirements? Researchers and security analysts have come up. We have generated some concepts regarding the elements of security for fulfilling the customers or individuals or organizations or any kind of institutions requirement. We have to fulfill those requirements. For we just have to keep in mind that what a cyber attacker or a cyber criminal can think of it will be one step forward from him. So we have kept in mind and we have developed 6 elements of security. So there is no risk of hacking of that data or information when we have discussed these various elements of security. After elements of security has been developed, there is lot much chance of protection of their data and information. So there's no potential risk of information as well as the system. So those 6 elements are the first one, 6 elements of security. So the first one is availability. What is availability? As the name suggests, availability specifies whether data resource is available when it is required or requested by the client. That means when we have that data or resources, when a client is asking for that data or information, name is suggesting that whether the data or information is available when it is required or requested by the client. The information that has been requested will possess the actual value only when legitimate users can take access. Let us suppose we have made a username and ID for something, some data or information. We have set up any kind of password. So whenever I'll be requiring or I'll be requesting for that data or information, it will be asking a username or password from me. There is that thing comes from availability. When I'll ask for that data or information, then only it will be available, otherwise it will be hidden. So for cyber attackers or cyber criminals, those data or information will not be available. If they somehow reach that data or information, the data or information will be asking any kind of username or password. So the legitimate user who have the authority or authentication of that username or password can only take access to those resources at the right time. but cyber criminals seize those data so that requests to access those resources get denied. When cyber criminals seize those data, that means when they used to try downtime of working servers, they just do is what they downtime the working servers. For that, data and information isn't available. When we put used to put that username or password, it gets denied, which is a conventional attack. How it is a conventional attack? Suppose if a cyber criminal is working on any data or information and it asks for a username or password, he don't have any kind of username or password. What will he do? He will downtown the server. How? He'll use that username or password. Suppose if we are using any kind of password on our mobile phones, after 5 to 6 attempts the phone is locked. After 10 times the phone gets rebooted. After 15 times the phone will get reset automatically. So what does this clarify? That if a cyber criminal is working on any kind of mobile phone, suppose he'll use one time password, he'll not get that password, he'll be using that 5 times, the phone will be logged, he'll using that 10 times, the phone will be switched off, then again he'll switch on and use 5 times more, then phone will be resetted. So if I am the authenticated user of that legitimate user, if I am the legitimate user, I'll not be getting that access granted because he has rebooted or resetted the device. These are the elements of security. So availability is the very first thing. Next comes integrity. What is integrity? It refers to techniques to ensure that all the data and resources that can be accessed in real time are legitimate, correct, and protected for unlawful users. Integrity, what it refers to the technique. What technique it uses? It uses is it helps to protect the data. Techniques, it provides some kind of techniques to ensure that the data is being run by the legitimate user on real time. The password should be correct, it should the data and information should be protected, as well as only the legitimate user can access it. Data integrity has become a primary and essential component of elements of information security. Okay, so data integrity means a technique that has become a primary and essential components of elements of information security, just because users have to users have to trust the online informations to use them. We have to trust the online information. Suppose we are working on our Gmail, so we have to trust that online information which we have being reaching. Suppose it is giving a one OTP, one time password. So we have to trust on that online information that can be accessed later on. Non-trusted data compromises the integrity and hence violates one of the six elements. If any of the six elements might get harmed, then all the five elements are working. But these five elements are powerless without the sixth element. They are interconnected with each other. So we have to use all the six elements together. So data integrity is verified through techniques of like checksum, change in hash values. Like we used to get any kind of OTP in our phones. The OTP is not same every time. It gets changed. So this is the work of data integrity, which do is changes the hashes values, changes the checksums, and changes the one-time passwords, and changes the data comparisons even. So this is called integrity. Next comes is authentication. What is authentication? Authentication is another essential element. Authentication is one of the essential element in elements of security. Authenticate, as the name is suggesting, that what is authenticating? It is the process of ensuring or confirming. Authentication is like confirming the things. Okay, confirming the identity and user is genuine and legitimate. We used to check the identity of the legitimate user, whether the user is legitimate, trusted, authenticated or not. So this process of authentication takes place when the user tries to gain access to any data or information. Suppose if I am trying any kind of, I have a one-time password in my mobile phones, so I'll be using that identity for that. If suppose if you are using anything, what identity do you need? If you are purchasing something, you just need to show that your PAN card or Aadhaar card in your bank 7. This is your identical proof. So the person sitting on the bank or the mobile shop or anything, what he do is he just authenticate your information, identity. He checks your identity. After that, you are willing to work or willing to buy anything, whether it could be a biometric access or it could be a login access or it could be a identity access. Okay. However, cyber criminals are more sophisticated tools have cyber criminals have more sophisticated tools and techniques to gain such access with the use of social engineering, password guessing, and brute office techniques. I'm just simply telling you the elements of security, but the cyber criminal is much more smarter than this elements of security. How? If I am using any kind of biometric, so cyber criminal is this much smarter that he'll use such kind of password guessings, brute force techniques, cracking ciphers, and some kind of social engineering type. So he might authenticate your value if he is smarter than you. Okay, the next one comes is confidentiality. Confidentiality. What is confidentiality? It can be defined as permitting approved users for accessing to all the sensitive as well as protected information. Permitting confidential proofs, like we have been using that confidential proofs. What is that confidential or confidentiality? We used to give access to all such data or sensitive or protected information when we have authenticated the person, it is that he is the legitimate user, then we use that confidentiality word. So we just give the legitimate user the access to that information or protected information. Confidentiality takes care of the fact that confidential information and other resources have to be revealed to the legitimate and authorized users only. That means confidentiality. Suppose I am using my personal computer. I have logged my local disk. So only the legitimate user, that is, I can only open that confidential information. No one else can see that. So confidentiality is also part of elements. It can be made certain by the use of role-based security techniques and ensuring users or views authorizations as well as access control of any particular data. We will store the protected data, confidential information in such a place that it will be only accessed when there is a legitimate user. Next come is non-repudiation. 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 Okay. What is non-repudiation? It can be defined as the way of assurance of that message transmitted among the two or more users while digital signature or through the use of encryption is accurate. It means that the way of assurance, it is the way of insurance that any kind of message is transmitted among the two or more users via a digital signature. Digital signatures are being used in cryptography, where some of the confidential signatures are being used digitally by the confidential users only, legitimate users only, who can give access to that digital signatures or through the use of encryption is accurate. Encryption means some kind of password only that two users know. When we'll be going through that cryptography, if you are a computer science student, you'll be knowing about the cryptography. If not, it is a digital technique that is used to encrypt the data information through passwords. Like somehow I'm sending any kind of digital signature to anybody. I'm not sending it directly because there are hackings or the threateners are being sitting. in the networks. So I'll be using any kind of code words or any kind of passwords which only the sender and the receiver knows. So for that, encryption is used. There are two: encryption and decryption. Encryption when the sender is sending the receiver with password, and decryption is when the receiver is opening that data information with that password. These are called decryptions. So authenticate data as well as its organizations can be acquired with the help of data hash. That data hash means data password. The last comes is utility. What is utility? Utility, as the name suggests, it is used for any purpose or reason and is exist and then used by users. Something which we are using for any kind of purpose or reason only. This is called utility. It is not entirely the type of element of security. Properly, it is not element of security, but we are using that utilities only for a reason or any kind of purposes. Okay, it is not entirely the type of elements for security. Particularly, we are not using that element of security. It is just a little bit part which includes an element of security just because we have asking it for any kind of purpose or reason. That's why. So various encryption mechanisms are used for securing the messages. I told like encryption and decryption to you. Now encryption has various security purposes with any kind of transmissions. Otherwise, the utility will not prevail. Any kind of I have used passwords. Like I'm sending something to anybody, that is called encryption with passwords, and I am asking for the decryptions. Decryptions requires Decryptions require the receivers that he will use any kind of password and will decrypt the data information. Until and unless he is not a legitimate user, he'll not be getting that password or prevailing that data information. So for today, this much is enough for you. We'll be discussing the terminologies of security systems tomorrow. Thank you, students.